Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. Today I would like to share few conversations, some teachings of Sri Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi with reference to the book The Practice of Self-Enquiry by Sri Anil Sharma. The conversations are based on spiritual practice, meditation and self-enquiry. Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi had dwelled deep on these topics to respond to the queries of spiritual aspirants. The questions were recorded by Sri S.S. Kohan. Let us start with the first question of the disciple. What is the difference between meditation, dhyana, and investigation, vichara? Bhagavan says, both amount to the same. Those unfit for investigation must practice meditation. In meditation, the aspirant, forgetting himself, meditates, I am Brahman or I am Shiva, and by this method holds on to Brahman or Shiva. This will ultimately end with the residual awareness of Brahman as being. He will then realize that this is pure being, that is the self. In other hand, one person who engages in investigation starts by holding on to himself and by asking himself, who am I? The self becomes clear to him. Mentally imagining oneself to the supreme reality which shines as existence, consciousness, bliss is meditation. Fixing the mind in the self so that the unreal seed of delusion will die is enquiry. Whoever meditates upon the self in whatever bhava attains it only in that image. Those peaceful ones who remain quiet without any such bhava attain the noble and unqualified state of kaivalya, the formless state of the self. Bhagavan says, meditation is possible only if the ego is kept up. There is the ego and the object meditated upon. This method is therefore indirect because the self is the only one. Seeking the ego, that is its source, the ego disappears. What is left over is the self. This method is the direct one. Disciple asks, meditation is with mind. How can it kill the mind in order to reveal the self? Bhagavan says, meditation is sticking to one thought. That single thought keeps away other thoughts. Distraction of mind is a sign of its weakness. By constant meditation, it gains strength. That is to say, the weakness of fugitive thought gives place to the enduring background, free from thought. This expands the divide of thought is the self. Mind in purity is the self. Disciple asks, what is dhyana? Bhagavan says, it is abiding as one's self without swerving in any way from one's real nature and without feeling that one is meditating. What is the difference between dhyana and samadhi? Dhyana is achieved through deliberate mental effort. In samadhi, there is no such effort. How is meditation to be practiced? Meditation is, truly speaking, atmanishta. But when thoughts cross the mind and an effort is made to eliminate them, the effort is usually termed as meditation. Atmanishta is your real nature. Remain as you are. That is the aim. But Disciple says, but thoughts come up. Is our effort meant to eliminate thoughts only? Bhagavan says, yes, meditation being on the single thought, the other thoughts is kept away. Meditation is only negative in effect in as much as thoughts are kept away. How do I meditate? Maharishi says, concentrate on that one whom you like best. If a single thought prevails, all other thoughts are put off and finally eradicated. So long as diversity prevails, there are bad thoughts. When the objects of love prevails, only good thoughts hold the field. Therefore, hold on to one thought, that is dhyana. Dhyana, meditation, is the chief practice. Dhyana means fight. As soon as you begin meditation, other thoughts will crowd together, gather force, and try to sink the single thought to which you try to hold. The good thought must gradually gain strength by repeated practice. After it has grown strong, the other thoughts will be put into flight. This is the battle, royal battle, always taking place in the meditation. One wants to rid oneself of misery. It requires peace of mind, which means absence of perturbation owing to all kinds of thoughts. Peace of mind is brought about by dhyana alone. And disciple asks, meditation is possible only with the control of mind, which can be achieved only through meditation. Is this not a vicious circle? Bhagavan says, they are interdependent. In fact, meditation includes mind control, the subtle watchfulness against intruding thoughts. In the beginning, efforts for control are greater than for actual meditation. But in due course, meditation wins and becomes effortless. Visitor says, your grace is needed for it, Bhagavan. Bhagavan says, practice is necessary, there is grace. ஐம்புல கள்வர் அகத்தினில் புகும்போது அகத்தினில் நீலையோ அருணாச்சலா. Grace is everywhere. Let's Bhagavan's grace may shower on all of us in our spiritual practice. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Why does not Bhagavan go about and preach the truth to the people at large? Ramana. How do you know I am not doing it? Does preaching consist in mounting the platform and haranguing the people around? Preaching is simple communication of knowledge. It can really be done in silence only. What do you think about a man who listens to a sermon for 1 hour and goes away without having been impressed by it so as to change his life? Compare him with another who sits in a holy presence and goes away after some time with his outlook of life totally changed. Which is the better? To preach loudly without effect, or to sit silently, sending out inner force? Again, how does speech arise? First, there is abstract knowledge. Out of this arises the ego, which in turn gives rise to thought, and thought to the spoken word. So, the word is a great grandson of the original source. If the word can produce an effect, judge for yourself how much more powerful must be the preaching through silence? Question. How can silence be so powerful? Ramana. A realized one sends out waves of spiritual influence which draw many people towards him. Yet he may sit in a cave and maintain complete silence. We may listen to lectures upon truth and come away with hardly any grasp of the subject, but to come into contact with a realized one, though he speaks nothing, will give much more grasp of the subject. He never needs to go out among the public. If necessary, he can use others as instruments. The Guru is the bestower of silence who reveals the light of self-knowledge which shines as a residual reality. Spoken words are of no use whatsoever if the eyes of the Guru meet the eyes of the disciple. Question. Does Bhagavan give Diksha, initiation? Ramana. Mauna, silence, is the best and the most potent Diksha, initiation. That was practiced by Sri Dakshinamurti. Initiation by touch, look, etc. are all of a lower order. Silent initiation changes the hearts of all.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. An offering for Sri Bhagavan's Jayanti. Sri Bhagavan said, if a man considers he is born, he cannot avoid the fear of death. Let him find out if he has been born or if the self has any birth. He will discover that the self always exists, that the body which is born resolves itself into thought, and that the emergence of thought is the root of all mischief. Find wherefrom thoughts emerge, then you will abide in the ever-present inmost self and be free from the idea of birth or the fear of death. Talks number 80. On January 1st, 2010, according to the Western calendar, Sri Bhagavan's Jayanti was celebrated at Sri Ramana Ashramam. I was living in Tiruvannamalai at the time. I arrived at the ashram about 9 a.m. In the mother temple, the Mahanyasa that precedes the chanting of Sri Rudram was almost completed. The priests were seated in a circle around the pots of water that would be used for the Abhishekam, the ritual bathing of the Shivalingam. I entered and began to go around Mother's Samadhi, and then I went around Sri Bhagavan's Samadhi. Usually at Jayanti time, I would stand by the side of the Samadhi to watch the Abhishekam or sit in the little alcove where there's a window that faces Bhagavan's sofa in the old hall. On this particular Jayanti day, though, there was a place right in front of the shrine and I sat down there. As the priests chanted and performed the rituals on the shrine, I started to read my copy of Sri Vishnu Saraswanamam. This was being chanted in the early morning, all during the month of Margari. As I was reading, the Veda Parthasala boys and their teachers came onto the Samadhi and began chanting. Suddenly, there was a commotion on the right side of the Samadhi near the entrance next to the well where the priests draw water. I saw Senthil Ganapadikal, the head teacher, and a few of the boys get up and look. The lady sitting next to me said, "Oh, someone must have fainted." From where I was seated, I could only see the soles of the feet and the hem of a light-colored sari. Then someone said, "It's Kanakamal." I quickly got up and ran over to the door. Some devotees carried her outside and set her down near the well on the side of the old hall. Somehow I was seated at her feet and looking at her face. Her eyes were rolled back in her head and her complexion was very gray. It seemed as if she was gently taking 3 gulps of air. When I touched her legs, they were cold. I was in a bit of a daze and felt relieved when I saw A.S. Krishnamurti, ASK, and his wife Aparna, friends and neighbors who had been very close to Kanakamal for many years and who had facilitated my contact with her. They both began to sing Aksharamanamale, and then we all kept repeating the refrain, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva. More devotees came, including Sundaram, ashram president, his wife Shushila, and Dr. Murti. Everyone there kept on chanting, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva. I put my hands on Kanakamal's ankles, hoping to feel a pulse, but instead I was getting these incredible surges of energy and light that seemed to flow up my arms. Then, suddenly, someone was tying a cloth bandage under her chin to the top of her head to keep the mouth closed, according to the custom. I looked up at Dr. Murti and he silently confirmed that she had passed. The Jayanti celebration with the Vedic chanting continued in the Samadhi hall. That morning, Kanakamal had approached the shrine through the entrance near the well. As usual, a car had brought her up to the gents' guest house and the path that leads to the well and then into the Samadhi. I didn't see her enter the Samadhi, but was told that she had walked into the shrine totally focused on the lingam. She didn't seem to see anything or anyone else. As she walked towards the railing, she shivered a little and then fell to the ground. Some devotees quickly carried her outside. The Jayanti rituals on the shrine continued without a halt, and devotees gathered around Kanakamal chanting Arunachala Shiva. The whole episode was so natural. I felt no sadness. On the contrary, an immense joy began to well up in me. I could feel her presence. I could feel Bhagavan's presence. A quiet dignity prevailed. While several devotees lifted Kanakamal to carry her back to her house in the front of the ashram, I ran back inside the Samadhi hall to get my purse that I had left behind in a flurry. By the time I came out again, everyone was gone, so I rushed over to Kanakamal's house, where several devotees had started to congregate. Kanakamal's body had been placed on the floor in the traditional way. She looked like she was asleep. We all sang the full version of Aksharamanamale. Then we were told that nothing more was going to happen until Kanakamal's close relatives arrived from Chennai and Bangalore, which would take some time. Since I wanted to go back to the Jayanti celebration in the Samadhi hall, I ran home quickly, took a full bath, washed my clothes out, changed into fresh clothes, and then took my bike back to the ashram. The place was very crowded by then. I ran around to the side entrance by the well. The door was locked, so I stood by the window. A devotee saw me and opened the door. I was standing near the shrine, approximately at the place where Kanakamal had fallen to the floor. The puja was over and singing had begun. The lingam was beautifully decorated with a magnificent floral arrangement. At the end, as is usually done on each Purnavasu day, the day of Bhagavan's birth star, Shushila and some ladies, including me, started singing the Purnavasu song from Muruganar's Sanidhi Mure, and afterwards the Arati hymns. I took my lunch in the ashram and then at 3 p.m. went back to Kanakamal's house to say goodbye before they took her to the cremation grounds. They had put a garland around her neck. By around 4 p.m. the relatives had arrived and the priest began the last rites outside the door of her house. Some of the ladies had washed Kanakamal's body and changed her sari. She was brought outside on a kind of stretcher that the men who had gathered there would then carry to the cremation ground. The stretcher was placed on the earth, and we filed around the body, taking rice in the left hand from the priest and then placing it on her mouth. When it was my turn, I looked at her beautiful face for the last time, and some tears finally did come for the loss of a beloved guide and friend. Some of the men then picked up the stretcher and carried her on foot to the cremation grounds. Others followed. It was not a big crowd. As per the custom, none of the ladies went to the cremation grounds. Kanakamal's passing away was in keeping with the humility and simplicity of her life at Arunachala, in complete devotion and surrender to Sri Bhagavan. I can't help but think of the famous 16th century Krishna Bhakta, Mirabai. Legend has it that Mira was absorbed into a statue of Sri Krishna in Vrindavan on Krishna's birthday. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana, the origin of Arunachala, Akshara Manamale, the marital garland of letters. From the book Arunachala Ramana, Boundland Ocean of Grace. Some other devotees along with Parani Swami also came to live with the Swami, Bhagavan, in Virupakshi cave. The food brought from the sadhu's chultri was not enough, so they decided to go into town and beg for food. They would not go and stand before any house. They would walk through the street singing Adi Shankara hymns. People used to go to them and put food in their bowls. Some other sadhus started going earlier, singing such songs to collect food. The Swami's devotees were put to a lot of difficulty because of this. So Parani Swami asked to Swami to compose something special for them so that when they recited it, people would know they were the Swami's devotees. At first, he refused, saying that were plenty of songs already made by the ancient Shaiveti saints. They continued to press him, however, and one day he walked round the hill, composing the first hymn, the marital garland of letters, as he went. It tells in glowing symbolism of the love and union between the human soul and God, and is among the most profound and moving poems in any language. Although he who wrote it was established in the bliss of indissoluble union, it was written for the sake of devotees and expresses the attitude of the soul that still aspires. This is the origin of the Swami Akshara Manamale, the marital garland of letters. Verses 79. Migaman illamal Magatru Alaikalam Agamal Kattarul Arunachala. Commentary by Srimadi T.R. Kanagampal. Paraphrase. That I may not flounder in the sea of samsara, tossed about by the dark Maya, unable to perceive the shore, like a ship caught in a storm and without a helmsman who steers the ship safely to the shore. Be the helmsman of my life and graciously save me, O Arunachala. Commentary. Here Bhagavan pleads with Arunachala to be the helmsman of his life by assuming the role of Guru and to ferry him across the ocean of samsara. Caught in the storm of delusion, he prays to be turned by Upadesa in the direction of Vishara to the shore of enlightenment. He prays to him in a similar vein. In an earlier verse, to be the staff and support for this art that oscillates without strength, to cling to and grow. Verse 72. The role of a guru is essentially that of a helpsman in the life of a true sadhak, guiding him to find anchor in the self. Whenever some of his intimate devotees asked him to interpret for them any verses they could not fully grasp, Bhagavan answered, "Please interpret them for me yourselves. Like you, I too must first think over the meaning before giving it. If I had any conscious celebration before reading them, I could elucidate them at once." All of a sudden, spontaneously, they poured forth. Benediction. Arunachalam Vali, Anbargalum Vali, Akshara Manamalai Vali. Hail Arunachala, the form of the Lord of the song. Hail the devotees who worship him with love. Hail the marital garland of letters they give to worship him.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. What was the first impression on those who saw Bhagavan? From the moment Bhagavan's eyes fell on a devotee, the latter's heart went out to him in spontaneous love and reverence. Their visit to Ramanashramam was a shattering experience for some. They literally fell in love with Bhagavan. The love which was awakened was of a sort which bypasses the physical and creates an awareness of a mindless rapture, pure joy. And what was the devotee's experience while they sat in his proximity? Sitting in Bhagavan's presence, people commonly felt that for the time being all their troubles were over, and this was the wonder of his presence. The most remarkable feature about Bhagavan's form was his eyes, extremely penetrating and profoundly fascinating. Once you had come within the range of those beaming eyes, there was no need for any other sadhana. And once these eyes had rested on you, there was no more fear or worry for you. The experience of a distraught young widow was quite typical. She went into the hall where the Maharishi was reclining and sat down. Bhagavan looked at her, just looked, with such infinite compassion that she felt that her sorrows were just not important anymore. She remained sitting and felt totally at peace, though not a word had been spoken. The Maharishi was a center of love to his disciples. He showered his love and grace on the devotees in so many ways. It is said that love was the force that created the universe. Perhaps it is, but the force of such an unselfish love as Bhagavan's purifies our hearts when all other methods prove futile. Kindling a deep affection in the devotees' hearts, Bhagavan taught them by word and example. No discipline can give the disciple the true peace which the Master gives. His affection was always there, unconditionally, and as fire melts ice, so his affection made worries melt. Where else in the world could be found a purifying and transformative power such as this to bring peace to our hearts? What was the change in a devotee's life after coming to Bhagavan? There was a pervasive state of being sparked by some kind of recognition which stayed with him, and the sense of never being the same again. We may not claim that the devotee's life was totally transformed after seeing him. No, most of them got married, set up house, had children, and started a career of their own. Their Giriastra Ashramam was their main preoccupation, but their visit to Ramana Ashramam had affected them. It had left a mark in their mind and heart. Although some of their material circumstances might have changed for better or for worse, their inner life had become more tranquil since the day they had had Bhagavan's darshan. Invariably, they experienced his grace, particularly when they were depressed in spirit. Whenever they felt that they wanted to go away somewhere, away from home, family, friends, books, mistakes, fears and sorrows, their minds automatically turned to Ramanashramam and their bodies followed. Today as then, devotees make the journey to Tiruvannamalai, walk into the ashram, enter the Samadhi hall and feel immediately home and totally at peace. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.